This is where business ideas and passions turn into profit. Whether you're dreaming of becoming your own boss but don't know how to get started, or have already started a side hustle and wish to grow it exponentially, your host, Victoria Wieck, can help you turn your passion-based business ideas into profit. Welcome to Million Dollar Passion. Here is your host, world-renowned jewelry designer and home shopping TV celebrity, Victoria Wieck.
Welcome to another episode of the Million Dollar Passion Podcast. Boy, I am so excited today to have an amazing guest who can help all of you. Trust me on this. Her name is Veronica Romney. And she is, she's too humble to say this, but people have called her the Dream Team Architect. As you know, many of you who listen to my show all the time know that I always believe that you are as good as your team. And, if you don't have a great team, if you have a bad team, they can always find even a great idea to be, basically messed up. If you got a great team, they'll fix whatever is wrong with, the little things that need to be refined. So Veronica comes to us with just a lot of experience. She's had, she's been in the digital space since 2008. I think my math is correct. It's like about 13 years or so, and going on 14. And she's worked behind the scenes. And a lot of times people work behind the scenes, they don't get the glory, but they actually make everything work. Trust me. She's worked behind the scenes as a speaker, trainer, director, and chief of staff for brands such as Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Pete Vargas, and Boss Babe. But that's, a lot of these big names. You might think, oh my God, can they really, they're so far, ahead of me. But Veronica is going to teach you how to translate that into a small to medium-sized business. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Veronica. Veronica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your journey, what it was like to work in a corporate environment and then making that transition, and how you became the expert that you are now.
Yeah. And I'm going to be controversial, but I don't hate the corporate world. I know some people are like, I hate the corporate world. I don't. There's certainly pros and cons of both the corporate environment that has structure, that you have this kind of psychological safety to know what is expected of you, who you report to, if your computer's broken, who to call. Right.
Yeah. That's one good reason to be in the corporate world.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And the benefits and things like that. But then there's this promised land of freedom that comes with entrepreneurship. And my parents are Cuban immigrants who started a company over 30 years ago. And they also came to this country with literally nothing. And I'm the oldest child. So I was front row to their hardship. And that has just always been inside of me. So even though I was having enormous success in my corporate run, it was kind of like Moana. Like I could feel the calling inside of me, that still small voice that was calling me forward. And so when I had my first son, is kind of that life transition that also was a transition in my career too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't hate the corporate world either. Yeah. I think that, if you're a millennial mom right now listening to this show, and I know I've got a lot of you, you may, some of you may have heard the pros and cons of living in the corporate world. I think the best thing to do is to spend a few years there, because they do know how to do things right. They have a structure, they have a system that works. The problem with a lot of corporate structure that works is that because they're so structured, because they're so ingrained in what they do, they're not most nimble, they're not most flexible. And you as an individual, kind of are plugged into a system. And, if you're lucky, you can really impact that system and grow with the corporation. But most of the time, you don't get to shine as an individual. You get to shine as a team, as one little, cog in a wheel. And that's okay. For a lot of people, it works. But taking what you've learned from that corporate world and now transitioning into helping small business, that have to do everything. As you know, in the small business world, we don't normally have an IT department. I mean, my IT department is my husband and my son-in-law. Okay, I'm just gonna get it out right there. I do have outside help. Like but yesterday I had an IT team that came out here because my internet wasn't working. And I've had to actually reschedule, many podcast interviews, yesterday, because I live in an area where the internet doesn't work all
Sure.
the time. And it was like, several $1,000s later, 8 hours of like 4 guys that came here and hardwired my whole house. But the point is, when you're a small business, you don't have a marketing department to go to. You don't have the legal team, department that can kind of vet your language. You don't have, a backup teams that can help you. So how is it then? Let me ask you this question. When you're hiring for a small team, do you believe that, for example, like a small business that has 4 people, okay, you got somebody who's really excels in sales, somebody who does your accounting and HR. So in a small business, is it true that then you would hire somebody who's much more flexible, more diverse in their area of expertise, or how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, this is, I think, the controversy with small companies, small teams, especially in the online space, is that we look for Swiss Army knives. That's what I call them, right? And in the corporate world, a Swiss Army knife is like an executive assistant. That there's just certain people that like wear 5,000 hats and are chameleons. And if you need a nail file, you get a nail file. You need a screw, you need a screw. Like they'll do whatever that is required because the position demands it. In online entrepreneurship and these businesses where majority of the time founders have had either little or no corporate experience, they don't know anything to do, like they don't understand structure, titles, anything like that. And they personally have had to do everything. They're the janitor, they're IT, they're bookkeeping, they're all the things, right? And so when you're trying to replace yourself, you replace yourself with people who look like you, talk like you, in the sense that they are also Swiss Army knives like you are, right? So if you're doing everything, you want somebody who can also help you do everything. The problem becomes when you start to scale and there needs to be more definition and, delineation between responsibilities. That's when all of a sudden a Swiss Army knife becomes a Frankenstein.
Right.
Where it's no longer advantageous that somebody can be at marketing and operations and HR and IT and just all the things, because then they're never really being put in a position to succeed if they have to do too many things and they serve too many masters. So I really try to help my scaling business owners recognize that, yes, a Swiss Army knife within a department is okay. A Frankenstein role that is part marketing, part operations, part platypus, part duck is not okay. And there are certainly differences between the two.
Yeah. So I am a firm believer that, when I work with a lot of female-owned businesses that's been around for 10, 15 years. They're doing like just close to pretty close to 7 figures, and they've done it by networking everywhere. Just outworking everybody, just buying everybody else, lifting everybody else, and have them lift you. They've just done it just by just working, just grinding it out. So now their kids are gone. They want to scale their business, and it's also true that if you're not careful when you're scaling, you can go broke. You can grow broke, basically, right? So where is the balance then here? Is it something like, okay, if I'm the founder and I'm a control freak, I'm used to doing everything myself. I was the marketing head, I was the legal head, I was, whatever. And all the relationships with my customers are with me, and all the relationships with my vendors are with me. So, I mean, that's the truth with a lot of entrepreneurs who are successful. Now, what happens is when you want to scale, do you then find out then what is the position that you most need help with? And go for the expertise there, or because you can't afford to hire 5 people that are.
Yeah, no, of course. Yes. You have to scale in a way that's financially sound and feasible. And so I made this mistake, certainly when I jumped from corporate to starting my own digital marketing agency. I was operating under this like mindset, like, oh, I'm just going to hire a whole bunch of W-2s. Everybody's going to get health benefits. It's going to be great. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, right. I barely paid myself, let alone giving everybody all these perks and benefits that I was accustomed to receiving as a corporate employee. And then thinking that I could turn around and do that in a small business right out the gate. So I made that mistake. And it's funny now, it's like when I'm consulting with my clients, like, no, you don't need to rush to W-2 status. That doesn't make you legit or official,
Right.
nor does that give you the title of a scaling business owner, right? Like, so for a really long time, especially because of the blessing of technology and the online resources that we have that we've never had before, a lot of the people that you'll surround yourself, they'll be your team, but they'll be in the form of vendors and contractors and part-time and this, and that's okay too.
Right.
Certainly from a business expense standpoint. Now, who do you surround yourself with first, and who makes the most sense? And this is where I don't agree with the general wisdom that's out there. There's a lot of counsel to get an assistant right away. Like, oh, just get an assistant right away because they can do a lot of the, I don't want to say trivial things, but like the inbox management, the calendar management, they can do a lot of the stuff that won't ever really generate money for you. But then at the same time, it's just part of the job. And I'm like, well, sure, there's that option. Yes. I personally, maybe this is my marketing background, I don't like to separate myself from voices very early on in a business venture or in releasing new products to the marketplace. It's also kind of like my speaker training. Like the most valuable content or the most valuable feedback that you can receive is, hearing what's working and what's resonating with what you're saying with the marketplace. So like, I actually am still in my inbox. I like being in my inbox. I'm the one direct messaging people on my Instagram account. Like I want to be close to the people just like I would if I was on stage reading the room. But where I do start to like let go is all of the tech. So usually the first thing that I counsel people is like all of that tech, all of that wiring, all of the email service providing, funneling, all of the wiring that is so desperately required for your virtual office and for you to automate your business. So you don't have to hire a whole bunch of people that are unnecessary that technology can take for you. That's the first person that I would probably invest in more than I would in somebody in my inbox.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the idea is that you have to figure out what as a CEO, I mean, if you're a tech-oriented company, obviously you don't want to remove yourself from tech.
Sure.
But if you are a marketing-oriented company, I agree with you because I'm in the jewelry business and I see jewelry, fashion, apparel. I see so many times where designers like myself, like we work in a separate space. And then marketing department gets and then we send it to the buying team. The buying team buys us stuff without any feedback from the marketing people. Then they send it to the marketing people and say, market this. And then the merchandising people can only merchandise what was actually bought, right? So like they're always constantly pointing fingers at each other when in fact, if they were all in the same room creating the product at the same time, it's true that like in a TV, retailer or a department store, they can look back at what sold last month. They're saying that sort of feedback, but it really isn't because it's reflective of what you've offered last month. So it's a garbage in, garbage out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you on that. In terms of aligning your vision, your purpose, your company's mission with the people that you're hiring. How do you know that? Because sometimes savvy applicants can do all this research online, and most companies have their mission statement on their website. So they'll tell you everything they want to hear, everything you want to hear. So how do you find that person or a team that's going to reflect your mission and purpose and provide that to your clients and customers?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic because I do a lot of screening and phone interviewing. And of course, like I'm not a recruiter for my clients as their fractional chief of staff, but I certainly help them make sure that we're getting the right people in the door and then onboarding them correctly for success. And because I work with such bigger personalities, we get a lot of fans that apply as you would, right?
They'll tell you what you want to hear.
They're either your students, they've purchased your products or courses from the past. So like, not only do they could read your mission statement and values on your website, but on top of that, like they're a fan, they want to emulate you, they aspire to have the life that you've created for yourself with your products and services. So is it best to hire your fans or is it best not to hire your fans? And that's usually a controversial thing because sometimes the easiest, quickest way to fill a seat is just to go to your community and go, I have a spot.
Right.
What takes time is going to Indeed and going through a recruiter and like da. But sometimes what I have found, this is just my personal Veronica's book of observations and experience is that marketing centric roles, I don't like hiring fans.
Yeah, I agree with
I
you.
don't like hiring students because I think they're not coming to work for us to improve us. They're coming to work for us to leverage the name and take internal learnings for their own gain and benefit, because their truest aspirations, because they bought our products, is so they can do their own thing one day.
Yeah.
The only exception to that is usually operations or customer service or customer centric. I love pulling from the community to help provide customer support or community management. So there's certain departments that I like to fish in the community, and then there's certain positions that I don't. So go ahead.
Yeah, I guess not to interrupt you, but if you don't have a name like Tony Robbins or Dean
Sure.
Graziosi, like if you were, Veronica Romney or Victoria Wieck, how would you go about um, is there a systematic way of figuring out how to align your vision with the
Yeah.
people? A lot of times when you hire somebody, yes, you have, 30 days, 90 days probation period, and you can hire somebody new, but it's time consuming.
Mhm.
You want to be able to hire the right person and grow with them,
Mhm. Mhm.
and evolve. If you evolve, they need to evolve just as
Mhm.
well. How do you
Mhm.
go about doing that?
Yeah. So I think where my spidey sense goes off in an interview is when somebody's leading too much with flattery. Like I mean, I think if everybody has a level of ego and it feels right to be like, oh, thank you. You like researched me and you looked at that and you took the time, and that's
Yep.
great. However, I don't want somebody to work for me because they think I'm perfect. I want somebody to work for me because they can help me improve. And the truth
Right.
is, you and I know as business owners that we're not perfect, nowhere close to perfect. So one of the questions I do tend to ask people in interview processes, especially if I can tell that they've done their research, I'm like, oh, because you've done your research, where do you think I can improve best?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I love that. I love, okay, so let me write that down because I actually do love that a lot because I think, I myself, I'm a very optimistic, complimentary person. Like I do homework on everybody I talk to.
Sure.
I just think that that's like a minimum you can give to somebody who's going to give you their time.
Right.
They're giving you the gift of time is the most precious thing anybody has, and they're giving
Right.
that time to you. So I feel like I have an obligation to find out who they are, and find some common ground and all that ahead of
Right.
time. So to me, when somebody comes to an interview and knows a little bit about me and my business, I feel like, okay, well, they've done their homework. Okay. And that's a absolute basic minimum. I won't actually hire anybody who hasn't done any homework on my.
Sure.
Okay. So in fact, the interview will be very short if you
Yeah.
find out that. So, but hiring someone because you know that you need to improve, you
Mhm.
need to evolve, and you know that you're shorthanded, or that is not your, your forte, it's not your expertise.
Right.
Then, that may turn into friction a little bit, or having to depend on that new hiree. But I
Yeah.
think that is, something that as business owners, we don't want to hire people who are exactly like us, because then you're just going to duplicate yourself, my chaotic, unorganized self, and it's not, just causes double
Yeah.
load of
And I think it's
chaos.
one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. So I think good advice is like, oh, hire people that are smarter than you, hire people that have complementary strengths, that don't have the same strengths as you. And I
Mhm.
think it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually do it, right?
Right.
Because like you're basically asking for somebody to disagree with you. You're asking for somebody to think for themselves and to challenge conventional wisdom and how things have been run. And you have to be humble enough to receive that feedback if you genuinely want to improve and scale your business beyond where you are today.
Now, let me ask you another question. So what happens when you hire, a lot of you who are listening, you have one or two or three people working for you, and you're already seeing some, a minor office politics or disagreement
Oh, sure.
between your employees. How do you handle when you have such a small team and you really don't have, when I first started my company, I had some issues where I had like 6 people in the office, and 2 people didn't get along with each other. And we had to kind of navigate, it was a little bit, it was getting to the point where we were starting to lose this whole real family atmosphere.
Mhm.
So how do you either prevent that or manage or navigate that?
It's hard to prevent. I mean, because personalities are personalities and people rub each other the wrong way with or without you hosting a company picnic. So like Do you know what I mean? Like you can, and most of these things happen at like sometimes even company sponsored events where like, this is everybody should be happy. And then there's like a something, somebody said something and somebody was,
tension. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not to say that there's nothing you can do to prevent it, but at the same time, like we are not like Xanos. We're not in control of the universe. We can't just snap our finger and everything just stops. So things will happen with or without our intervention. Now, if they happen, it is certainly the responsibility of the leader to be very swift about saying this is okay and not okay, especially with small teams.
Right.
So if you have a smaller work family and you can tell that two people aren't getting along, you kind of have to decipher as a leader, okay, is their conflict affecting the rest of the team? If the answer is no, not yet, okay, then you kind of hope they're going to handle it. If you can tell that the ripple effect is starting to be a distraction or negatively impact work productivity from the others because it is a small environment, then I very much intervene very quickly. I will bring two people into my office or my virtual office on a Zoom call, like, hey guys, I respect and admire you and your role, and I'm so appreciative that you're here. I'm also extremely appreciative that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel saddened that there is this kind of tension and conflict between the two of you. And now I counsel with you. Very much I'm going to ask of the two of you to work it out because it's negatively impacting the rest. And if this isn't resolved, we have to have a different conversation. So I do move very swiftly and just call out the elephant in the room and have a crucial conversation, because 9 times out of 10, keeping your job is more important than stupid drama. And if they can't see past stupid drama to keep the job and to be in a place where they're appreciated, then I don't know if they're a good fit, generally speaking, anyways.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's really important. You know, a lot of times when, and this goes directly to the small business owner who, you know, worked and worked and worked, and she pretty much like did everything herself, didn't sleep at night, all this stuff. Then she hires a first one. She's like kind of relieved if she's really lucky. Then she hires a second one and the two don't get along. So, you know, a lot of times the people that are barely scratching the 7 figures and hiring people, they're not used to managing people. They're not used to managing teams. They're used to doing their thing and kind of, you know, living with their consequences. Right. So, you know, I guess the instinct is like, well, why can't that person be like me? Why can't they just suck it up? All this stuff happens. So I thought I would just ask that question because this is the one question I get a lot from entrepreneurs. I do a lot of speaking, a lot of helping small business, female small business owners. And that's one of the first things I get, like, how do you manage, you know, the conflict within you know, I really need all of them. And they're just, you know, some of them just don't get along. So I'm glad that, you know, I think you and I are on the same page on that as well. In terms of the different methods people scale, is it necessarily only coming down to the teams, or were there other factors involved in scaling a business correctly? Obviously, having a team, the correct team is a key factor. You know, nothing else happens without them. But what else is there?
I mean, there's the difference between a growing company and a scaling company. A growing company, you're growing because you're adding either more resources like team members or more products that you can sell to the same customer, increasing the, you know, average customer lifetime value. Like, right, there's multiple ways that you can grow a business, and that's the definition of a growing business, is by an addition of resources or offers in the marketplace. A scaling company is a company that can still make more money without adding more resources to the pot. No more products, and getting more from the team that you have. Like, there comes a place where like the goal is to scale, not necessarily just to keep growing and adding and adding and adding, because you have more headache. There's more logistical operational drag with the more that you add in your pursuit to make $1 million or $10 million. You don't want $1 million on the top line and $1 million in expense on the bottom line. It's not even worth it.
Or $2 million on the bottom line, you know.
Yeah, well, I was being generous. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you don't want to get into the situation where you're getting a point of the diminishing return on your investment, you know, in terms of human resources as well as all the other resources. Any other, you know, I know that you know, still do a lot of speaking. You help other people, small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, you know, scale in a way that's not disruptive. You know, a lot of times if you don't know how to scale, if you don't scale, you know, using the right resources, you can actually literally go broke. And I've seen that so many times. I've been on HSN for almost 20 years, and I think I can count maybe 200 different companies that did all the right things up to that point. And then when they wanted to go from, let's say 10 million to 50 million, that's when they actually go broke, because the stakes are so high at that point. Every order, instead of a $10,000 order, it's $1 million order. You make one little mistake, that money's gone. Or maybe you have a customer who owes you $2 million that goes bankrupt, and then you're tight. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So just growing, just for the sake of growing, is not all that glorious at times. So any other words of wisdom that you want to leave our audience with, Veronica, this morning?
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying, like always asking yourself why I want to scale or why I want to hit certain revenue projections, because you're right. There's sometimes, honestly, quite frankly, the sweet spot is like $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, because you hit $3 million, everything breaks. And you hit $10 million, everything breaks. And you hit there's certain milestones. It's almost like that 7-year marital itch where 7 years and you're like, I just don't like you anymore. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And you kind of go through those seasons with your business where, sometimes you're like, actually, I really liked it when it was a baby and it had fat, chubby little thighs and I could just sit it down. And now it's like an unruly teenager and I want to kick it out of the house. There's certainly different seasons. And I think as business owners, you're the captain and commander of the ship. You can decide if you want to stay where you are, because that is where you've hit this perfect balance of work and life, and not letting something that seems appealing and the glory of saying that you're X figures or you've hit this, but do you really want the lifestyle that comes with that? Because you're certainly more exposed and there's certainly more sacrifice, and you kind of feel like you're selling your soul. So for me, even in my own ambition, I'm a highly ambitious human being. There's no doubt. I can't help it. Maybe it's the Cuban genes in here, but I'm a very ambitious person. But there is certainly a conversation I have with myself all the time. How far do I want to go before it's too much? Not just a diminishing return in net profitability, but a diminishing return in my lifestyle and then my family relations. So I think if I were to part ways with your audience, it'd be just don't go for something just because somebody else does that. And I say that as a representative of the big names. People want well, I want a Tony Robbins business. I want a Boss Babe business. And I'm like, you guys, I've been behind the curtain, and it comes with an enormous cost. Yeah. Don't try to emulate something you don't understand.
Yeah. That's really well said. And that is something that I talk about week after week after week here, because, as children of immigrants here, well, I am an immigrant. I'm not a child. I came here with my parents brought me here involuntarily, but we see the sacrifice. We see, the need for balance. Our parents probably worked too much.
Still do.
Yeah, and still do. My father actually passed away in 1999. But really, I think that if your success, if all the additional revenue, all the additional profits come at a enormous personal cost, whether that comes in the way of your health, mental or physical, or personal relationships, or you just not having time for yourself. I mean, I love to paint and play the piano, all this stuff. And if I need to give up so much of my life, then it's just at some point it's not worth it, because if you make $150,000 a year or something, I read somewhere that you could afford almost everything you want in life. And so you could be quite happy, so, understanding scaling and all that, it's great. But this whole episode wasn't about, you going from 7 figures to 9 figures, for example. Sure. It is really about growing to 7 or 8 figures so that you could work fewer hours and high quality time with your family. So that was very well said, Veronica. And thank you so much for coming on this show to share your expertise and your heart. You can reach Veronica and find out all about her life, her journey, and everything that she's committed to doing for all of you here. Just simply go to her website, go.veronicaromney.com or veronicaromney.com, and you'll just be amazed. And again, I wish you an amazing week, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
You've been listening to $1 Million Passion, where we turn dreams into reality and passion into profit. According to ancient Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Congratulations on taking that first step today. For more information on how Victoria can help you turn your business idea into $1 million and to download Victoria's free ebook on passion-based business ideas, visit milliondollarpassion.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player.